So I actually played piano since I was age 6. Then I started learning the clarinet as well.
Katheryn, I want to thank you for taking the time to be here this early Monday morning.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
All right. This is long overdue. I should have had you on much earlier. I think this makes my this is my 4th year doing the podcast. You went to school with one of my sons.
Yes, I did.
At university.
Yes.
And yeah, I've known you for quite a while. I've known of you anyway for quite a while. And I watched your TED Talk. Now, I know they have to actually train people to start off with, but I don't think they had to do too much with you. You were very good. Were you ever a Toastmaster?
Thank you. No, I haven't done Toastmasters actually.
Well, see, I don't know that you'd really need to unless you just wanted to practice, because you had no uhs, no ahs. You pause properly. You enunciate your words really well. It was fantastic. It was a really good job doing that. I think all of you that if you ever look at the TED Talks, you should see the one on the Sento mind, because your parents own the Sento, right?
Yes, that's right. I actually grew up with my family in the Sento business, so public bathhouses. And I had multiple generations of bathhouse owners. And unfortunately, the last one we had closed when my grandfather passed about a decade ago. But it was a really interesting experience just growing up, going to Sentos every single day and thinking that that was the norm, which it was the norm, many decades ago. But nowadays, I think it's kind of a culture that people still like to enjoy doing for relaxation, but it's not really a daily part of their lives.
Right, but there's still a few around.
Yes,
even
exactly.
in the neighborhood. You grew up in Tokyo?
Yes, so I grew up primarily in Florida, but I visited Tokyo every summer to visit my grandparents and visit that side of the family. And I even just went to elementary school for a bit too during that time in my childhood years. And then I moved officially over to Japan for university.
So the first time to live in Japan was during the university?
Exactly. So I already had some conversational Japanese from my family members that was under my belt, but I had never actually lived here before officially on my own.
Did your mother, when you were being brought up, did your mother speak to you in Japanese?
She did occasionally, but it was only when it was just the two of us. So my dad doesn't speak too much Japanese, so when he was around, we usually would just stick to English, and then in other cases, she would just use Japanese when it was just the two of us. And of course, if I was ever in trouble, she would automatically switch to Japanese.
You mean when you had this? Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Did you learn to read and write as well? Did she have you do that at all?
Not too much. She did kind of show me some books for like hiragana, katakana, because I was kind of curious about it. But I hadn't really learned too much reading and writing. That wasn't until later. So actually, when I came to Japan and I started going to university here, we were required to take language classes. And so I was placed into like a level 3 Japanese, which was still too easy for me in terms of what I could understand, but it was way too hard for me in terms of reading and writing. So, most of what you're being evaluated on is your reading and writing. So I was really slow in exams and not doing well on paper, but the classes themselves were pretty boring too at the same time. So it was kind of an unusual space to be in.
Right.
Yeah.
And did you take anything outside of that to supplement it?
I actually decided when I moved here to get a job. So I was like, you know what, I learn better, not just from the textbook. I want to interact with people. I think that's really the quickest way to learn something, like be really immersed in the environment. So I actually decided to live in a share house. So I wasn't living in a dorm with other students. I lived in a share house with Japanese women. And I also worked at a cafe, and I had to interact with customers and learn more Keigo. So I think that really, really helped me with the language. If I had been living in a dorm or something, I just would have stuck to English all the time. And
probably, with the other foreign kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Tell me, when you were growing up, Katheryn, were you aware that you, of course, were half?
Yes.
Okay, so what was it like for you in Florida growing up? Let's start from elementary school.
Yeah. So
what kind of student were you? I want to know what kind of student you were. Were you more academic or were you more sports-minded?
I was definitely not sports-minded, but I was really big on music. So I actually played piano since I was age 6. And then I started learning the clarinet as well. And I actually wound up being in the All-State for clarinet. So I was one of the top clarinet players in the state of Florida for about 4 years. Yeah, and music was like a huge part of my life. A couple of the schools I went to was actually for art school programs. So that was my forte.
And are you still playing clarinet?
I wish I was. I'm not, but I think I'm too hard on myself. So if I played the clarinet now, the sound wouldn't be to my standard. So I actually, once I kind of left behind the music world and I moved to Japan to attend university here, I started getting more into ballroom dancing and just dancing in general. And so that's kind of my way of enjoying music. And I like to go to, the Blue Note and hear a lot of music performances there.
Yes.
So I really do keep up with music, but I just enjoying it in a different way.
Okay, so you really focused on music from elementary school all the way up.
Yeah.
Okay, and sports, that was kind of like, you did it because you had to.
I did it because I had to, but I actually, I was an ice hockey player too.
In Florida?
Yes, I know, I always hear
Wait
that.
just a minute. How did that come about? Your father, where's your father from originally?
He's originally from New York.
So he played hockey?
No, he didn't. He did not play hockey.
He didn't play hockey?
It was more that when I was a kid, I really enjoyed roller skating. And so my parents were like, well, why don't you try hockey? Because that's a way where you can do team sports, but also do roller skating. And so I started off doing roller skating and just doing hockey. I was a goalie. That was my primary position. And I wound up going to boarding school. And at boarding school in Connecticut, they had ice hockey there. So
that's
I
where you started?
I started doing roller hockey when I was maybe around 9 years old.
Now, what's roller hockey is what?
It's basically hockey just using roller blades.
The street blades,
yeah,
right,
street
of course.
blades, yeah. And then once
on grass or something?
No, just like it's kind of like a concrete rink, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and then once I was around, I guess 15, a little bit later than that, once I was in high school basically, I switched and went to boarding school. And so then I started doing ice hockey there as a goalkeeper.
Okay. So when you were in school, did you have favorite books? I mean, you said you were more academic. So what were the subjects that you really liked? Let's say starting in elementary school, what piqued your interest as a little teen?
I wouldn't say I was academic in the sense that, I mean, my husband's an academic. So when I think academic, I think of him because he's just very passionate about academics.
And what does he do?
International relations. So he's both a researcher as well as a professor.
Okay.
For me, though, I remember when I was like 11 years old, I went to a local Barnes & Noble bookstore and I stumbled upon personal development section in that store. And I just remember really being fascinated. I picked up a book that was about divorce. And even though it was unrelated to anything happening in my families, I just remember looking at this book thinking, why do humans have these challenges where they don't know how to communicate with each other, or where they're not sure what they want, or when, they're struggling to be kind to each other? And, just one book to another, going into the weight loss section and wondering why do humans have challenges around maintaining their weight?
You're 11 years old.
Yeah, I was 11 years old, and
Okay.
I just thought that the whole personal development, self-help section was just really fascinating.
Now, you were in there by yourself?
Yeah, I was in there by myself. Yeah, I mean, maybe I was with my family just,
Right.
In the bookstore itself, but I
Okay.
remember just wandering around and just getting really curious there. So I think even now I'm just really obsessed with personal development, and so I think that's kind of where my interest started.
Well, that's because that's the profession you're in too. I mean, but that makes sense.
Yes.
So you were able to follow your passion and make it into a business.
Yeah,
which is really beautiful. Okay, so in elementary school, you found yourself being involved in personal development. Did that lead anywhere? From there to junior high to high school?
I think at that time I didn't, I mean, right now I'm a leadership coach, but back when I was 11 years old, I didn't even know that was like a career option.
I don't think it was. I don't know that
it was just kind
then,
of
was
like
it?
planting seeds. And when I was in high school in Connecticut for the boarding school, I really, really struggled with the environment there. And the reason is because coming from Florida, which is such a hot and sunny location, to going and living on campus in a very, very cold and dark place, my body was just really struggling with adjusting. And it wasn't until one day I heard about something called seasonal affective disorder, which is where you feel depressed because of lack of sunlight. And I just got really fascinated by that, and I wound up doing my kind of like a senior thesis on seasonal affective disorder, and you know, just ways that you can kind of help your health and wellness when certain things are beyond your control. I can't really control sunlight, but I can control other parts of my day-to-day to try to maintain my health. And I did a speech about that as part of my my project for the school, and that was my way of kind of giving back to the community too, to kind of help make sure that other students who were struggling with, you know, being in an environment that was not the right fit for them, how they could kind of focus on their health and well-being.
Were you around 16 or 17 then, or something?
Yes, around that age when I was there. Yeah.
What was your social life like in high school?
My social life. So I think one of the reasons why I wanted to go to boarding, I begged my parents to send me to boarding school.
This is boarding school now?
Way. Yes.
What year did you start into boarding school? What year were you?
I was a sophomore when I went to boarding school.
So you were 14, 15?
I was 16, I think, when I went, and then became 17 as soon as I started.
But you graduated from high school when you were 18 then?
I was actually 19.
Okay, so you
by the time that I graduated.
Did you stay back a little bit then? Because
I did, because I went to an art school, and so you know, the school that I went to in Florida was really renowned and it was a great school, but switching sophomore year to go to a prep school, especially if I was to go into my junior year, it would have been the time when everybody's doing SATs, applying to universities, and you know, you don't really have all that track record of your preparatory school behind you and your academics. And so I decided to stay back 1 year and repeat my sophomore year so that I could really just focus on the academics.
Wait, Katheryn, wait. You're kind of surprising me to be that young and to be able to think like that. Did you have any encouragement? Was it from your mom or dad or anything like that?
Yeah, I did not think that way. It was more of a recommendation from the people around me.
Who?
Yeah, so it was a combination of my parents and also the school saying, look, it might be hard to come in as a junior. If you've never been to a prep school before, you're going to have to learn how to do rigorous academic activity, plus you're going to be doing SATs, plus you're going to be applying to universities.
Did you find that to be true?
A lot. I think from the academic standpoint, it was a great fit, but from my age perspective, it was not. Because as soon as I went to school, I turned 17, and I was a sophomore.
Okay.
So I was living in a dorm where my dorm monitors were all 17, 18 years old. So I was their age, but I was living with 14, 15, 16-year-olds.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so it was very uncomfortable, especially the first 2 years. And the thing is, in boarding school is a little different. There's actually quite a bit of people who are 18, 19 when they start, because there's a post-grad program. So a lot of students who maybe want to go to university to be in varsity sports, they will come and do varsity sports at our school just for 1 year, like as a gap year between they already have their, you know, high school diploma, but they're just taking 1 more year before they go to university. So there were older students there. It's just I wasn't living with them the first year that I was there.
And you said you really pushed your mom and dad to
I did. I begged them. I was like, please send me to boarding school.
Okay, but not knowing what it was going to be like or anything like that whatsoever. Had you visited it already? Had you been
No. I visited before I had applied, but it was that I already knew that I wanted to go to boarding school before I had even seen the school and applied for it. But the reason I wanted to go is because I wanted to be around international students.
And you weren't in the school you were in, you weren't? It was more colloquial?
No, it was very local, and I think part of it was that a lot of the students who were passionate about the arts, they wanted to go to universities for music and for other art programs, and I didn't feel like that was the path I wanted to take. And of course I could have done anything I wanted to. It's not like because I was at an art school I had to go to an arts university, but I just felt like everybody around me was going down a path that I didn't feel was right for me, so I felt like I needed to be in a different environment to make sure I had kind of more options or things I could think about. And I also really wanted to go abroad, but since I can't do exchange programs from high school, I thought maybe if I go to boarding school, I could at least get the experience of having that away from home opportunity, but then also be around other international kids from different locations as well. So
that's very interesting because, Katheryn, most kids tend to want to be in a part of the group.
Yeah.
They follow each other. How did you manage not to want to stay? Unless you're a loner, it's very difficult to not want to leave your friends.
It
especially
is.
at that age.
But I think you said the word loner. I don't know if I would
Right.
say I'm a loner, but I would say I'm more like a lone wolf kind of thing. So like music-wise, piano and clarinet, I was like very good at my what I do, and then clarinet can obviously fit into an orchestra. So I can be part of a group, but I'm also doing something what I'm doing on my own. Same thing with hockey. I was a goalkeeper, so I wasn't the main person interacting. I was just kind of like off on my own, you know? So I think I was already open to the idea of just doing something independent and not really needing to think too much about which people I would be interacting with. But I thought as long as I'm in an environment with other people who want to have a more worldly experience, I thought that was like the next step for me.
It sounded like you were very secure with yourself, like you had a lot of self-confidence already when most kids don't. Most people don't. That's why you're in the profession you're in. Most people don't grow up that way. They grow up feeling dependent on other people, disliking themselves, and they have all of these other ideas about themselves that aren't necessarily positive. They keep them stuck in an area. For you to be able to take not take a chance and get out and venture into the world that you want to be a part of is really, really, I think it may not be as rare now as it was then, because we have much more information available to us than we did before.
Yeah.
So I think it's causing people to want to go out and not be so afraid
That's true.
of the unknown, because it's not unknown anymore.
That's true. I think if my parents were here, they would probably describe me as just having a big appetite. So, and I think they were just trying to figure out how to satisfy that appetite. Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, Katheryn wants to do hockey. She wants to do, arts. She wants to go to boarding school. Okay, let's just figure out how to help her experience the things she wants to experience. But, a big part of the reason why I was open to stepping out and doing things was definitely because of growing up between Japan and the States. I don't know how I would have approached all of that if I hadn't grown up seeing other parts of the world.
Right. How old do you remember first coming to Japan?
Oh, goodness. I mean, it was probably as early as being a baby. So
do you remember? So that's all you knew. It was a part of your life before you knew it. You were just
exactly.
You get on the plane in the summertime, come over here.
Yeah.
You find yourself walking naked in the onsens all over the place.
Exactly.
In the Sentos everywhere. So it was really interesting.
Yeah.
This is a part of your life. So, and then how'd you feel when you talked to other kids, because they weren't doing that? Especially the kids in your school when you were growing up in elementary school.
It depended. I think that when I was in elementary school, or just going out throughout middle school in Florida, I don't think I thought about it too much. But you do feel like there's a limit to how much you can interact with people because of their experiences too.
I was going to add this.
Yeah.
When you're in elementary school, after your summer vacation, you'd have to stand up and say what you did over the summer.
Yeah, that's true.
So how was it for you when you're saying, I was in Japan, I'm on the other side of the planet, and I'm going to Sento, and other kids are saying, well, I went to the park, and I went here, or I stayed home and watched TV, I watched a series of this. What was it like for you? Because you're the only one that probably, in your class, for several years, that was actually going to Japan.
That's right. I think, again, because I grew up with a lot of the same people, they already knew that I was going to Japan every summer, so it didn't seem, again, it just seemed normal. And, you're with people you grew up with. But I think it became more obvious for me when I was at boarding school. Like, I have a specific memory of being in a class where the assignment was to talk about, like, a specific activity that you do that you feel you can really be yourself. And I remember, other students talking about duck hunting or going to play baseball or, something like that. And then I was talking about the Sento. And
even then?
Yeah, even then, just saying, and I think that was the first time I was wondering why, like, what is it about public bathing that makes me feel so comfortable when it's such a vulnerable experience?
It's for the U.S.
Exactly, for the U.S. For the U.S.
It's really funny. It's really funny that we're so sensitive about our sexuality, because we'll grow up and never see our parents. I never saw my parents
Yeah.
without clothes on.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. I mean, just being in the Sento, that's where everybody is literally themselves.
They have no choice, yeah. You are what you are.
You are. Yeah, there's really nowhere to hide.
That's right.
And there's just so many learnings from that experience. And I had to ask myself during that assignment, what is it about that environment where I feel the most at ease, And so I thought that was a very thought-provoking assignment.
When they ask you that.
Yeah, and it was just interesting to hear everybody else's too, but
Wait,
just picking
everyone else's. What do you wait? Hold on.
Yeah.
So you gave your experience. So they asked the class what they thought about it. They hadn't been through it. What do you mean?
No, I mean just hearing everybody share their story, because it wasn't just writing about it. You actually had to read your experience to the class.
Okay.
And so everybody could hear the different stories of, that people found was very close to their hearts.
Okay, right. But but you're the only one that had been to a Sento.
Exactly. So I was just basically explaining this concept to them. Right. But what I found interesting about the assignment was just being able to compare what other people found interesting about their lives, and then me asking myself, why is this the topic that I'm picking, and what is it about this topic?
Why was it? Why was it?
I think it's because I had to ask myself, what is it about that environment that made me feel relaxed, even though it's such a vulnerable place,
Okay.
So, but there's so many layers to it. I think there's community, there's the community component about the people you're around. I think it's about seeing other people. One thing I've noted in the talk that we were talking about earlier is seeing how people look, So there's people who have scars, maybe people who are missing a breast, things that are just so normal in the Sento that you just don't really notice or think about when you see people out and about on a normal day. And it made me think, okay, I'm biracial, and I have a lot of difficulties being biracial in a Japanese environment, a lot of awkwardness around trying to fit into the culture in Japan. But in the Sento, I'm just another person showing my humanness like everybody else, So I think that once everybody was stripped down to just the naked components, you all can kind of see that you're all the same,
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's really what
because it is so private. It is private.
It is, yeah.
Yet Japan has a culture of daily exposure.
Yes, yeah.
It's
exactly.
daily exposure, so therefore it does not matter where you come from, what you look like. You have said, here I am.
Yeah, here I am.
There's no more exposure I can have
me.
than this.
Yeah.
And you become accepted then. I think that is good. I never thought about it that way. That is so true.
Yeah, I just felt accepted there because I didn't have to be anything else.
You couldn't be anything else, no matter what you say. Yeah. No matter what you say. And I like what you said in your TED Talk when you mentioned you saw a woman that had a scar over her left breast.
Yeah.
And you didn't know anything about it. You just said, okay, some people just have one breast. And then later on you found out that she suffered from cancer because you didn't know that.
I didn't even know what cancer was at the time. Exactly. I just thought, some people have one breast, some people have two breasts. It just was, just another normal thing.
That is so interesting.
Yeah, and so it's when you're a kid, you're more innocent too because you don't really know things. But and even for me, I had a baby about a year ago, and I wound up having a C-section. And when I went to the Sento for the first time after that, it didn't even cross my mind that I had a scar on my body, but I think there's quite a bit of women who might have a C-section scar and they want to hide that as much as possible. You don't want to go to the beach, or you don't want people to notice that you have a scar. Well, at least you want to be below the line. You want to have it low enough so that you can wear things that won't expose it. Yeah, but I grew up seeing so many C-section scars. That's right. Yeah, so it made me feel like that was a place where I didn't have to worry about it.
Okay, now you leave boarding school.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You got into the colleges you wanted to get into, but did you apply only in Japan?
Actually, no. So I really wanted to go. So I still really wanted to go abroad. I hadn't really scratched that itch yet.
Oh, that's right. You hadn't.
Yeah.
Right. You just wanted to go to school.
That was part of the reason I wanted to go to boarding schools. I thought maybe I could be around international kids and I could still get that kind of home away from home experience. And so I was only looking at universities that had a study abroad exchange program. And then my mom, who's Japanese, she mentioned, she's like, oh, Katheryn, if you go to Sofia University, I heard that there's a 4-year undergrad program that's in English. And so, you could just go there and do the full 4-year undergrad program instead of just a 1-year study abroad exchange program during your junior year. And that sounded like music to my ears. I was like, why would I?
She knew her daughter. She knew her daughter.
I was like, I don't want to go to a school I'm not interested in just to wait until junior year to go somewhere else, Right. And so, but I also wasn't necessarily committed to it either. I just thought it sounded like an option that I wanted to consider, and that sounded great. But the idea of starting or doing my whole undergrad somewhere else wasn't something I totally wrapped my head around. So I, applied to the university, and really in a very short amount of time, I'm talking like 3 weeks or so, I got this like handwritten letter, meaning the envelope was all handwritten. And then the inside printed document said, this is a list of successful applicant, is what it said. And there was like a whole bunch of numbers on this list, and I couldn't understand if this meant that they had received my application or if it meant that if my number's on this paper, that means that I'm accepted to the school. It was kind of cryptic because it was written in English that was kind of unclear. It was such a short period of time had passed that it didn't feel like they would have had time to review my application and then send me an acceptance letter, much less one that was this small with, on a cryptic piece of paper. But, on the back side, it was all in Japanese. I couldn't read it, so I had to scan it and send it to my mom and ask her to check it. And then she was really emotional when she's like, yeah, because I think for her, growing up in Japan, knowing Sofia University really meant something to her.
That's right.
For me, not really knowing what it was, I was like, oh, this school in Japan accepted me. But at the same time, I couldn't go back. It was like once I knew that I had a 4-year undergrad opportunity abroad, I was like, this is it.
You committed then?
I committed. I was like, I don't even see why I would want to go to another.
But you never applied. Did you apply for any?
I did apply to other schools, but even without knowing whether I was
made it or not.
Exactly. Yeah. I just knew that that's the path I wanted to go on. Yeah.
So what'd you do? You started to pack your bags and stuff. You were already mentally in Japan now, but physically you're packing your bags there. And then what'd you do? You just said your friends, I'll write you or whatever. What was the communication by then? We had fax machines. What year were we talking about?
Oh yeah, we had email communication, and also Facebook was kind of just starting.
Right? Just starting in universities, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that I was kind of an early adopter for Facebook because a lot of Facebook used to be very exclusive.
But it was only for colleges. You couldn't get on it.
For colleges, and then boarding school is kind of, boarding school network.
If you got on the list, you had to get on the list. Your college had to be put on the list, or you couldn't do it.
Yeah, so I think I was still kind of like a very early Facebook user. Right. But yeah, my friends and network was already on that platform when I had moved to Japan. So yeah, there was no problem keeping in touch, basically.
All right, so you leave the States, you come over here, you're all excited. What was your first experience in Japan? Now, you'd been here all the time, but I mean, what was it? Now you know you're going to be living here at least for 4 years.
Yes, exactly.
So what was it like? You get off the plane. Did you have you already knew where you were going to stay before you?
Well, so initially I came with my parents, and we stayed at my grandfather's house. Yeah, so the same place I always go to every summer. We just stayed there, and I think they were here for about, I can't remember how long they were here for, but they were just here for maybe a week or two to help me move into the share apartment that I decided to live in. So also, by the way, I chose the share apartment on Craigslist.
Because that was a big thing then, those days.
Craigslist,
that was just started, right? That was it.
I was like, I must have been crazy to pick an accommodation as a college student on Craigslist.
But it hadn't got the reputation yet, had it?
I mean, it was kind of questionable even back then. I mean, I still use Craigslist for other things, like selling a blender or something like that. But I just feel like if you're just selling a blender, that's relatively safe.
The place to
live somewhere by someone you meet on Craigslist, that's, a little questionable. But I thought I found this, great. The reason I found it on Craigslist is they were actually looking for a native English speaker to live in the share apartment because they wanted to create a community where Japanese people could be learning more English, basically. And but it wound up working in my favor because the Japanese women were so tired by the end of the day that they were just reverting to Japanese.
And that's what you wanted.
Exactly. So I wound up picking up probably
How
more
many
Japanese.
people? How many people were in this apartment?
It was 5 total, including me.
Okay.
And most of them stayed for quite a while. So I would say there was like a core group of people that I spent maybe at least a good solid few years with.
Were you the only one in college?
I was the only college student, and
Okay.
the ages ranged probably around age 28 to 40.
Oh, so you were the youngest too.
Yes, I was the youngest there.
So you got an education in all kind of ways.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
interesting. That is really nice.
Yeah.
And were any of the women there married?
Actually, a handful of the women I lived with over the course of the 5 years I was there were divorced. So they needed a place to move into that was already furnished and within their budget. So that was one of the benefits of being in a share apartment, is that you already have furnished accommodation and you don't have to pay like first and last month's rent and like all these deposits and agent fee and all that stuff.
Yes,
So it's really easy to just move into a share apartment. So some of them were divorced and transitioning into whatever they were doing next. Some of them had never gotten married, and I guess they wound up feeling lonely, so they decided to live in a share apartment because at least they could have like a community with other people. But I think the backgrounds of each of the people were really interesting.
And you went through each one, didn't you?
Yeah, well,
you got to know every single one. You knew them better than they knew you, right?
Well, yes, for sure. Especially, I spent so much time trying to pick up the language. So, yeah.
That is beautiful. That's beautiful. Okay, so what was it like? Now, your first year here, what was it like? Would you find the differences?
Well, I think if we're going back to just moving here, I also remember that the first event I went to was a hafu event, so event for half Japanese people. And by the way, yeah, so this was the first one they ever did. So on Facebook, there was a Facebook group.
Because it wasn't big.
Yeah, there was a Facebook group for half Japanese people, and they were going to launch their first ever meetup. And I was like, the timing is perfect because I'm just moving to Japan. So it was my first time ever taking the train past Ikebukuro. I only knew Ikebukuro area because that's where my family was from. We're from Itabashi. So Itabashi, Ikebukuro, that's the only area I know. I've been on the train and stuff myself, but I've never ventured past that. And actually they had it in Aoyama, which is the area I live in now. So I feel like everything's kind of full circle. So I went to this event and I felt really excited because, first of all, going to the half Japanese event was interesting because I used to feel a lot of angst when I would speak Japanese to people, but they would always reply in English. And this was the first time I was in a room full of people where I didn't know which language to use. I was like, wait, does this person only speak Japanese, or do they speak English? Or maybe they don't speak English at all, or maybe they don't speak Japanese at all. Like, I have no idea. I was like, this must be what it's like when people see my face, And so it was really humbling to experience that. And I think it just really confirmed that I was in the right space, after boarding school to come over here. And I just felt like I made the best decision for myself for, the next steps with what I was going to be doing with university. Yeah.
How do you see yourself now? Do you think you're going to be here indefinitely, or do you just think this is going to be a short term? And
that's a great question. I mean, at this point, I've been here for 15 years, so I definitely forgot to go home after I graduated, and I don't really have any plans of living anywhere else. But now that I have family of my own, I think it might depend on my own child's upbringing and seeing, how she feels and when she's growing up here. So we'll see how it goes.
Are you thinking to have her through the system, the Japanese system, or are you going to try to keep her in the international system? Do you know?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we, right now, since I had a really great experience going to local elementary school, I think that she's probably going to be fine through local elementary school. And I think it's really middle school is the question mark for me. I did go to a local middle school just for a little bit, and I felt like that's the time when the whole senpai kohai, feeling starts to come into play. And of course, hormones are starting to change and that type of thing too. And I think that that's kind of the point in time where I think it'd be great if she had a more international experience. But I think what we have set up right now is that she would maybe go to local Japanese schools, and then we can utilize so much of what TAC has to offer.
Just to keep her involved.
Exactly, to keep her involved in the international community and English. So yeah, we're just going to see how things go and play it by ear.
By the way, that's how I did it, and that was done on advice from working with so many different families and watching those kids grow into adulthood. So I decided with my own kids, if you want your children to really understand the mindset and to really feel, I don't believe in halves. My sons, I told them they were double, because I said, you didn't get half of me.
Yeah.
I gave 100%, your mother gave 100%. So if anything, you're double. But for practical purposes, everyone's going to call you half, so just understand that I don't see that. Right? I put them in a Japanese elementary school because I wanted them to understand the Japanese, and they thanked me for it. Because you become Japanese only through hoikuen to 6th grade.
That's a good point.
If you come in middle school, you miss it.
And I also think that those earlier years is when kids really learn how to be, you know, I wouldn't use the word independent per se, but they really learn how to take care of themselves and really be mindful of themselves and mindful of themselves and other people. And I think those are qualities that are really important, that are actually kind of hard to adopt when you're in more international environments. So.
Well, it depends on which one you're talking about, too, because you're talking about the English or the German or the French or the American when you say international. Because, well, the Japanese do such a great job of making people feel they belong.
Yes.
And I think they've, and especially in the bigger cities, they have to accept anyone that gets in it now. It's no exceptions. We all do this together. And that's only done in elementary. After that, you're doing it. I had my kids do the same thing you did. A little bit of middle school so they could just see why I'm not letting them stay in middle school. And then I put them in international school, and boom. It's wonderful. All right, so you graduate from Sofia now. We're going to take you out of Sofia, which is one of the top schools here in Japan. That's why your mother was so elated.
Yeah, she was pretty excited.
That is the school, oh, I'm telling you, it has a good reputation. Just like in the States, when you say Harvard, that's all you have to say. I went to Harvard. You're done. You say, what do you want to do? You don't even have to apply for the job. What do you want to do? So you got out. What did you decide you wanted? Well, I know what you studied, but why did you decide to go into that field? While you're Jochi? International. You decided to international business at Sofia.
Sofia. International, yes. So I studied international business.
Right.
Well, that was one option, and they had the program itself was liberal arts. So the other programs, I think, were around more like international relations or maybe something like humanities related. And I felt like international business was just the area that I had the most interest in. I think people who are interested more in international relations are more into maybe policy, that type of thing, or culture. And yeah, I just thought that there was a little bit more practical things that I could learn there, maybe just get an idea or a sense if that's something I wanted to continue to pursue beyond that.
What made you decide to get into the field that you're in now, in your business, where you actually coach people and help them get on their way in life and to deal with these different challenges? Because I'm sure you've had your fair share of challenges growing up being half. And then deciding to come to the country where you know they're going to say, well, you might think you're Japanese, but no, we think you're more gaijin than you're Japanese. You say, but I am. My mom's Japanese. They say, no. What made you decide to go into that field?
So this also kind of has a story too, but I think if I was to put it into a nutshell, I was already getting my certification in health and wellness coaching. So that's something I was studying while I was working, so doing that on the side. And the reason I was originally wanting to help people with stress management and just health and wellness in general, and a big part of that interest came from the seasonal affective disorder thesis that I had done back in high school. So that's really where the seed was planted, where I was like, oh, you can actually take control of certain parts of how you approach your lifestyle to really help support you through difficult situations or situations that are out of your control. And I wanted to really share that with people. And so I knew that that was something I was always thinking about in the back of my head. And even when I was working at a cafe in college, I worked at a macrobiotic cafe. So it was all natural, organic, things that are helping people with healing. So I was really still in that space a lot ever since high school. And I was like, you know what, I still have so many ideas I want to put out there. Let me just go ahead and get a coaching certification too while I'm on top of it. And so I went through this whole health and wellness coaching certification. And at that point, then a lot of things changed at my company that I was working at. We had a new director come in, and I remember sitting down with this new director, and she said, okay, what do you see yourself doing at this company in your future? And I was like, oh, I've been, I really love the company I was at. I had actually even been to multiple offices across the globe. And
it was that big? This is microbiotics.
Yes. Oh, no, this was not related to macrobiotics. I was working for a concierge company.
Okay, I was about to say, it was across the country. What company was that? Herbalife? Okay.
Yeah, so I was working at a company that was a concierge company.
Okay.
And they had locations worldwide, and I had visited many offices. And I really just saw myself getting more into management, more into leadership. I wanted to help bridge, things between our local Japanese company with other locations. And the new director came in and said, what do you see yourself doing? And I said, oh yeah, I would love to get into management. I'd love to do all these things. I've been to all these different offices. And she said, oh, well, but you're a foreigner. Like, I don't see a foreigner being a manager here. And it was such a
just
yeah.
The record scratched and just boom, the music stopped.
It did. Exactly. That's literally how I felt. There was literally no room.
You didn't anticipate this at all. This really shocked you when she said this, because she had been very tatemae, or very surface until then, and treated you the same way the whole time. How many years had she been like that with
Actually,
you?
no, she was brand new. She was a
she
new
was
director.
Brand new.
It was a new director came in. So the old director was very like, oh, you have all these interests.
They had relationship with her.
Like, oh, you want to go to Singapore? Go to Singapore. You want to go to...
And that's why you've been everywhere.
Yeah, so I had gone everywhere. And then he wound up moving to a different division. And then we got a new director who came in. And then so she was trying to scope out everybody and figure out, her new direction for the company. And then it was really like the record stopped when she said she doesn't see any point of having a foreigner be in a management position.
This is a Japanese company, obviously.
This is a UK company with the local Japan office.
So for all practical purposes, it was completely Japanese on this end.
Correct. It was very Japanese.
So you were considered a foreigner.
Yes, I was considered a foreigner.
Of this European company?
Yes. Yes.
And you looked at her and said, could she tell by your face? You think?
I would like to think I have a good poker face, but
it was hard to keep it in check at that time?
I think I was just in shock.
Because it really surprised you, right?
Yeah, I was just from going to have one leader who was so supportive of all my interests. And, I was obviously really helping the company too with all the things that I had been doing. And so I was going above and beyond. And it was just a completely different mindset that she had, and there was really no room for any I could not see myself doing anything else at that company just with that one comment that she had made. And so I realized that I had a few options. I was kind of in the process of trying to figure out what my next career move would be.
How long had you worked with them?
I had been there for 2 years. I think 2 years is kind of when you're at the point of trying to wonder, what else you could do. Do you want to get a promotion, or do you want to get into a different, department or something like that? So 2 years is kind of when you're starting to think about your next move anyway. And so I realized, I was like, okay, well, I work for a concierge company, which means on paper, the only things people usually think about, if I talk to a recruiter about what kind of job potential I have, they would be saying, well, what about a hotel? Or what about a receptionist? Or what about a secretarial job? And I'm like, no, that's not the content of the work I was doing. I was doing like relationship building with other offices and flying around the place and communications and that type of thing. And I just felt like when you looked at my CV, you weren't really seeing the potential I had for all this other stuff. And I was getting really pigeonholed into things like hotel front desk type of thing. That's what people think of when they hear concierge. And so I was like, okay, well, either I can try to get into a completely different industry, but I'm probably going to have to start entry level again. Or I could maybe go back to school and, maybe look into another degree or something that's more focused as a professional, like a law degree, something like that.
Wait, Katheryn, you make it sound like it was just so easy and so methodical. You were so clear about it. Wait, you had to be really hurt. And you were devastated.
I was hurt.
Wait just a minute. Wait. Let's get into your area. Let's get into your field now. You're making it sound like it was so. Okay, well, I guess after the crying, after the being hurt and stuff. Which books did you get? How did you start to think about it? What did you do to repair yourself so that you could start thinking the way you're speaking now?
Yeah, what did I do?
That was hard.
That was hard. Yeah.
Oh, someone telling you that after you spent 2 years traveling.
Yeah.
Everything, making the relationships that you can't get back again.
Yeah, she was just putting me in my place, basically. Like, I could stay there, but I would have no mobility, basically.
You're being fired. Yeah. You can't do what you did.
Yeah, exactly.
Anymore. You're done. So what did you do? How did you repair yourself? Where'd you get the Band-Aids? What was the brand?
Oh, my goodness. I know, right? Yeah, I think at that point, things really take time. So I kind of, it's really, I've had this discussion with other leaders too about like communication with feedback, but like when you don't think an employee has a good idea or something like that, if you just say, oh, that's not a good idea, and you just leave it at that, people don't know what to do with that information. They're like, okay, so should I never give you any ideas anymore? Should I think in a different way? Or like there's no constructive information, and that's really the situation I was in. As she said, you can't be a manager. But I remember after I left that company, my former director had told me, oh, well, if manager wasn't right for you, then maybe you could have been an account executive, or maybe you could have been a leadership and learning and development team or something, and doing training, or like there's so many other things you could do. It doesn't just have to be like management of the stuff that you're doing. And I really didn't have that scope or understanding of what
neither did she.
Other things. Yeah, because we didn't know each other. She was just a new person who came in, gave this blanketed, you're a foreigner, I don't want a foreigner
management.
How long
did you last after she said that? How long?
I was gone within 6 months. So it was really, she planted the seed where I was like, okay, I'm just going to be quiet quitting from this point forward. I was already looking to other things, and I was trying to think, how can I leave?
And still not really burn the bridge and keep it nice, because she's not going to give you a good recommendation if you leave soon.
Yeah, well, I had really great relationships with the core team that I was working with, and my own direct manager was really great. So I really wasn't caring too much about this particular director herself. I was just focusing on maintaining the relationships that I had at that time, but I wasn't really going above and beyond, because I realized that it wasn't really going to help me go anywhere.
Right.
Yeah. So, but again, going back to it, I was thinking, okay, I could either change into a different industry, but potentially have to take a pay cut and start entry level again, or I could go back to school, or I could start a business. And because I have a coaching certification and I want to help people.
Wait. Did you get that after she told you this?
No, I got my coaching certification simultaneously while I was working.
Oh, okay.
And so by the time she told me this, I already had my certification.
Okay. So you already had another path that could be taken.
Exactly. Right. I was already starting to try to figure out how could I help people with health and wellness.
But you're going to do that within the same organization.
I was going I was going to do that on the side. Like, I wanted to have a blog that could help people. I wanted to do coaching on the weekends or outside of work. Like, that was how I was thinking about it. I knew I wanted to help people. But I realized that maybe I could actually just do that as my full-time job. It suddenly didn't feel like a risk, because starting a business is a huge risk.
See, you and I think different about that, and most people do. I think starting a job is not. It's because you're risk adverse. Think about it, and we miss it too. Let me just say this. Think about this. The risk was you thinking that company was going to be okay, but she came in and That was the risk. That's why that
Yeah.
happened. That can't happen in a company
Yeah.
that you own.
Exactly. I own it. I was like, no, I really thought
So
that way.
you're risk adverse.
I was
That's
like, what
am.
if I go to another company, a different industry, take a pay,
That's
get
a
started
risk.
over, and then 2 years later, they tell me the same thing.
You
They
know
don't
who
want a
really-
foreigner in management.
you know-
I was like, what if I go to school, get another degree, and then I find out I don't like law, or something, So I felt like, what if I just gave myself a 2-year window to experiment with starting a business? That would be my timeline, for myself. If it doesn't work in 2 years, you go get another job. Like, that's what I thought. And it really made that risk assessment of starting a business feel totally doable. I wasn't taking a leap of faith to leave behind my comfort job and security to go start a business. I was like, no, this is this will be my reality after 2 years. Either I try it and it doesn't work, I go somewhere else, or, each avenue could have potentially had the same outcome for all I knew. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And I think that was a blessing in disguise for you.
It was, yeah.
The fact that she came within, you'd put your whole heart into it. You had no thought whatsoever of this not becoming a reality. And this one person from out of nowhere, this angel, comes to you and says, look, she said, look, I'm blessing you by saying, you can't do what you used to do. You said, what?
I'm a firm believer of blessing in disguises, as
what
much
it
as I
was.
don't like them in the moment.
They don't feel like that when they come.
They do not feel like that,
That goes with the saying, Katheryn, they say that no one likes change unless they're the ones making it. Okay, so you tried your business for 2 years?
I'm in my 9th year of business right now.
No, but I'm saying,
so
let's talk about the first two. When did you decide, okay, this
Yeah.
is really working? How long did it take?
It actually took me, I would say, 3 years to get to the point where I
So you
felt
went
like I was
past
doing
the
my
you went
business. I
past the 2 years,
the-
even though.
But here's what happened. So here's the problem that I had starting a business. It's that I had been doing coaching, but I had never been doing paid formal coaching. Like, I had never gotten a client, and I also had people I had worked with before, but I didn't have like a portfolio that I could share with people of certain results that I've gotten with people. I hadn't worked with people for like an extended amount of time. So there was a huge amount of imposter syndrome that I was having, where I had the passion, I had all the knowledge, I had some experience, but I didn't really know how to position myself. And I didn't know anybody. I had no presence online, no website, nothing. I didn't know who to talk to. So I was really starting from scratch. It's not like somebody who's already established a career and then decides to go out on their own, and then maybe they just take some of their clients.
That's what usually happens.
And then they just have to kind
That's
of
right.
build from there. That's still a big challenge, but at least
It is,
you're
it is.
established in your field, you have your network, you have your community, and it's just about figuring out how to
Right.
branch
To
off
bring
and
it into
then
what you
build that
have.
on your own. I was really starting from like, no one knows me, I have no portfolio, like nothing.
And also your own. You haven't done it yet. Who
Yeah,
have I
and I
done it
hadn't
with?
done
Who
it
have I
yet.
done it with?
Yeah. So, and I
Yeah.
didn't even know where to start. I was like,
Right.
should I start with building the online presence? Should I start meeting people? Like, what's the right path? I had no idea. So there was a lot of like parts where I was like stopping myself because I was so scared of sales, especially coming from the hospitality industry. I was in the concierge hospitality industry, so I was a very much like a, I will do anything and everything for you and over deliver, to all of a sudden being like, do you want to pay me for my services? It was like a very huge
Right.
switch,
It is.
So the first couple years were challenging just to figure out how to start, I guess. But in that process, I was like, you know what? I think what would make me feel more comfortable is if I did have some side income from like a part-time job while I'm continuing to build this. But I couldn't figure out what type of part-time job I could do where I wasn't taking too much of my energy while I'm also trying to build a business. It's a very challenging balancing act. And I just happened to come across an accounting position where they only needed someone to help with the end of the month cycle for the payroll. So they only needed someone to come in 5 days a month to just help with all the huge volume of stuff that they had to process. And that was perfect for me. It was the right amount of salary that I could just pay my basic bills while I was doing other stuff. And then I had the full other 3 weeks to just focus on my business. And that really helped me not feel so insecure, basically,
financially,
yeah,
right.
financially, while I'm trying to make this work. Because I was self-funding everything, too, as I was going.
So you didn't ask mommy and daddy, come on, daddy, come on.
Well, no.
No, but that's interesting
No,
because
yeah.
that means he really raised you well. That means your parents did a good job in
I
giving
didn't-
you. I think
Yeah.
we should raise our children to not need us anymore.
I
And a
didn't-
lot of people have a problem with that.
I definitely was not like, oh, I want to do this, can you give me any cash?
Right.
Yeah,
Right,
so
that's what you're saying, right?
yeah, I don't think that was, I was just trying to figure out like how to make it work, basically. And so yeah, taking on the job, I did that for 1 year while I was continuing to build up some of the work that I had been doing. And it was really like once I had hit that 3rd year mark where I was starting to get that, I felt like I was more established, basically. Yeah.
That's
So,
good. Oh, wow.
yeah.
3
Yeah.
years into it. That is quite a challenge.
Yeah. If you had told me at the beginning that it would have taken 3 years.
You just said,
Yeah, I think honestly, like being naive is really helpful sometimes.
they
Yeah.
make the best salespeople too.
Yeah,
When
being
you don't know
naive.
what it feels
Yeah.
like to be rejected. Katheryn, if you could go back in time and meet the younger Katheryn and give her advice, how old would she be and what advice would you give her?
I think I would probably go back to my boarding school days because those were definitely the most challenging. And I think I would just say, like, keep staying curious, like keep following your curiosity. You don't have to have everything figured out. I think when you follow your curiosity, you're always going to find that right path for you.
I think that is so true, and I think you're doing that, and you continue to. Thank you so much, Katheryn.
Thank you. It's been so great being here. I really appreciate being here.
I want to thank all of you for watching or listening to this podcast. And never forget, it's all unknown, so continue to reach for the stars.
Because you're too blessed to be stressed.